His eyes locked with mine across the polished desk, that slow, knowing smile breaking over his lips like a secret I wasn't meant to hear. "You have potential," he said, his voice low, smooth as silk, sharp as command. Heat rippled through me as he rose, every step toward me deliberate. I didn't move. I couldn't. My pulse thundered in my throat. He leaned down, breath warm against my ear. "Show me," he murmured, "on your knees." I should have resisted, should have said no. But my body answered before my mouth could. I sank slowly to the floor, eyes never leaving his. The power shifted in that moment delivered, not taken. And I felt it everywhere. He didn't touch me. He didn't have to. The air between us was electric charged with something heavier than lust, sharper than want. I could feel him watching me, every second stretching tight with unspoken promises. That moment broke something open in me. I hadn't planned on therapy. It was my sister's idea after my third panic attack in a month. "Just try it," she'd said, sending me doctor. Gabriel Reed's name. He specializes in trauma. What I expected was clinical distance, a clipboard, a couch. But what I walked into was something else entirely: muted grays and shadows, soft leather chairs, and a man with eyes like storms and a voice that slipped past every defense I thought I had. I didn't expect to crave those sessions. Or him, not the way I did now. I returned for my second session a week later, having spent 7 nights replaying our first meeting in my mind, his eyes tracking every movement I made, his voice low and firm, that unsettling way he seemed to see straight through my professional veneer. I told myself it was clinical transference, the kind of attachment you read about in psych journals. But when I stepped into his office again, everything felt different, closer, more charged. Or maybe it was me, more aware, more wanting. "How have you been sleeping, Eliza?" "Doctor," Reed asked, his voice smooth as polished leather. "Better," I lied, settling into the leather chair across from him, its texture cold against the back of my thighs through my skirt. I avoided his eyes, but I could feel him watching me. Always watching. He cocked his head slightly, tapping his pen against the pad. "Interesting. Your body language suggests otherwise." I shifted, legs crossing. Heat bloomed low in my belly at the attention, at the precision of his focus. "Is that what they teach? You in therapist school?" I murmured, trying to mask the tremble in my voice. "Mind reading?" "Not minds," he said, voice deepening, eyes darkening just slightly. "Bodies. They tell the truth, even when words don't." My arms crossed instinctively, a shield. "And what is my body telling you, Dr. Reed?" He paused, then set the notebook aside deliberately. His voice dropped lower, "that you're holding everything in. Bracing, controlling, and that talk therapy alone won't break through that." I swallowed. "So what will?" He leaned forward just enough that I could smell the cedar in his cologne. "Embodiment work, structured exercises. A surrender of physical control in safe conditions." It felt like the air shifted. "Sounds like yoga," I said lightly, though my breath had gone shallow. His eyes didn't leave mine. "More structured than that. It requires discipline, consent, trust, and complete surrender." The word coiled through me like silk. Surrender to what? To the process, to your discomfort, to vulnerability. His gaze was unrelenting, to me as your guide. Something inside me twisted tight, then loosened in a way that made my thighs tense. "That sounds unorthodox." "It is." His tone was calm, measured, but laced with promise. "But it works. The question is, are you ready to give up control?" I should have said no. Should have demanded research or references. But instead, I found myself nodding. "Good," he said, rising with effortless authority. "Stand." My body obeyed before my brain caught up. He crossed to the center of the room, then turned to face me. "Now lower yourself to the floor." My breath hitched. "You want me to kneel?" The word landed between us like a trigger. It's an exercise, he continued, almost gently. One that reconnects mind and body through conscious physical surrender. A place to start. It seems my voice cracked. Inappropriate. Only if you sexualize it. His face remained unreadable, but his tone was cool steel. This is about power, Eliza, yours, and what you've been taught to fear. My knees bent, slowly, deliberately. I knelt on the soft rug, heart thudding in my chest like a drum. I felt ridiculous and exposed, and something else. Heat, awareness. Hunger. He walked a slow circle around me, his footsteps measured. I felt his gaze move across my shoulders, down my spine. A flicker of shame burned across my skin, and yet I didn't move. I wanted him to see me like this. I wanted more. How does that feel? He asked, his voice closer now, behind me. Vulnerable, I whispered, and stupid. Stay with the vulnerability. What's beneath it? I closed my eyes. My body was humming. Shame. Good, he said quietly, stepping closer until I could feel the warmth of his presence. Now we're getting somewhere. Silence fell between us, not clinical, not distant. It was loaded, intimate, and I was acutely aware of every inch of skin, every breath. When I left his office that day, my knees still tingled from the carpet, and I couldn't stop thinking about the low timbre of his voice, the way it wrapped around me like a command. I wasn't confused anymore. I wanted to kneel again. I wanted his approval. And I knew I'd be back for more. Our third session began with paperwork. Lots of it. What's all this? I asked as Dr. Reed handed me a folder containing several documents. Informed consent, he replied, his voice clinical and detached compared to our last session. If we're going to continue with embodiment therapy, I need your explicit consent and understanding of the process. I flipped through the pages, skimming sections about physical posturing, power dynamics, and therapeutic boundaries. This seems intense for therapy. He sat back in his chair, watching me carefully. It is. That's why we're having this conversation now, before proceeding further. I came to a page titled Safety Protocols. A safe word. I raised an eyebrow. Isn't that for other things? His expression remained professionally neutral. It serves the same purpose in any context where someone might feel vulnerable or overwhelmed. If at any point an exercise becomes too much, you say pine once and we pause. Say it twice, we stop completely and return to conventional therapy mode. Say it 3 times, and the session ends immediately. I felt heat rise to my cheeks. This sounds like something from a romance novel, not therapy. I understand your skepticism, he said, but trauma recovery often requires pushing boundaries in controlled environments. The safe word ensures you always maintain ultimate control. I set the papers down. How do I know this is legitimate? Dr. Reed reached for a book on his shelf, handing it to me. This is the textbook on embodiment therapy approaches. My dissertation is cited on page 217. I flipped to the page, seeing his name among the references. Okay, I said slowly. But how do I know it's helping me, not just, I don't know, satisfying some power trip for you? His eyes flashed, the first crack in his professional demeanor. That's an important question, one you should be asking. He leaned forward. Each exercise has a specific therapeutic goal. I'll always explain it beforehand and process it afterward. If you don't feel it's helping, we stop. And the kneeling? What was that about? Submission can be healing for those who've had their power forcibly taken. By choosing to surrender in a safe environment, you reclaim agency paradoxically. His voice softened. Did it bring anything up for you? I thought about the unexpected emotions that had surfaced. Yes, that's the point. He passed me a pen. But you only sign if you're comfortable. We can do traditional therapy instead. I studied him, trying to separate my growing attraction from my instincts about his methods. Both were telling me to trust him. What's next, if I sign? We establish clear boundaries. My role as your therapist comes first, always. These exercises happen only in this room during scheduled sessions. No contact between sessions except for emergency cancellations. I nodded, uncapping the pen. And Eliza, he added, his voice dropping slightly, you'll need to be honest with yourself and with me about your responses to these exercises. Physical, emotional, all of it. I signed my name, trying to ignore the thrill that ran through me at his words. Good, he said, taking the papers. Now, let's begin. I'd like you to lie on the floor. What? On your back, eyes closed. It's a trust exercise. I hesitated, then slowly lowered myself to the carpet. Now, his voice came from somewhere above me. Tell me about the last time you felt completely safe. And somehow, lying there vulnerable beneath his gaze, I began to talk more honestly than I ever had before. I arrived for our fourth session with nervous anticipation humming through my veins. The previous exercises, kneeling, lying down, controlled breathing while he circled me, had awakened something I'd spent years suppressing, vulnerability, and worse, a desire for it. Today we're going to work on physical boundaries, Dr. Reed explained after I'd settled in. His office blinds were drawn, casting the room in soft, diffused light. What does that involve? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm going to approach you. Your job is to tell me when to stop when my proximity begins to feel uncomfortable. He rose from his chair and moved toward me slowly. 1 step, 2, 3. I remained silent, watching him dot 4 steps. 5. Now he stood directly before me, close enough that I could smell his subtle cologne. Eliza, he said softly, you haven't told me to stop. I swallowed. It doesn't feel uncomfortable. Something flickered in his eyes. Most trauma survivors have difficulty establishing boundaries. Their internal alarm systems are either hyperactive or completely silent. Which am I? That's what we're exploring. He took another half step closer. Now? I shook my head. Interesting. He was close enough now that if either of us inhaled deeply, our bodies would touch. Most people stop me at twice this distance. Maybe I'm not most people. Clearly, his voice had dropped lower. May I touch your wrist? My pulse quickened. Yes. His fingers circled my wrist gently, his thumb resting over my pulse point. Your heart is racing. Is that part of your assessment, Dr. Reed? Gabriel, he corrected. When we're doing these exercises, I'd like you to call me Gabriel. The intimacy of his name in my mouth felt more transgressive than his touch on my skin. Your body is responding to my proximity, he continued, professional despite the charged atmosphere, but you're not setting a verbal boundary. That disconnect is significant. What does it mean? It could mean several things. Perhaps you've been conditioned to ignore your body's warning signals. Or, he paused, his eyes searching. Mine, perhaps your body isn't sending warning signals at all. His fingers tightened slightly around my wrist, and I felt my breath catch. What are you feeling right now, Eliza? Physically. Warmth, I admitted. Tension. My stomach feels tight. Fear. I shook my head slowly, not fear. Understanding passed. Between us, unspoken but unmistakable. He released my wrist and stepped back. That's enough for today, he said, his professional demeanor returning. How are you feeling? Confused, I admitted. Is this ... normal for therapy? He sat back in his chair, putting appropriate distance between us. Embodiment therapy often evokes complex responses. The important thing is that we process them honestly, and if my responses are ... inappropriate, there are no inappropriate responses, only inappropriate actions. His eyes held mine. You're doing well, Eliza. You're allowing yourself to feel, perhaps for the first time in years. I left his office that day with my wrist still tingling where he'd touched me, wondering if this growing obsession with my therapist was part of the healing process or the beginning of something dangerous, and wondering, too, why I didn't care. Which it was. I spent the week after our fourth session researching embodiment therapy. I found scholarly articles, therapeutic frameworks, even a TED talk on trauma and the body. Nothing that matched exactly what was happening in Dr. Reed's Gabriel's office, but enough to convince me it wasn't completely fabricated, yet doubt crept in. Or perhaps it was guilt over how much I looked forward to our sessions. How often I replayed his touch on my wrist. I arrived at our fifth session armed with questions and a determination to reassert professional boundaries. I've been reading about embodiment therapy, I said as soon as I sat down. Gabriel smiled slightly. Good. What did you learn? That it usually involves yoga, meditation, or dance. Not. I gestured vaguely. Whatever this is. Those are common approaches, yes? He crossed one leg over the other, studying me. You're skeptical today? I'm questioning the therapeutic value of some of these exercises. That's healthy, he said, seeming pleased rather than defensive. What specifically concerns you? I took a deep breath. The power dynamic. The physical proximity. The fact that I paused, struggling to maintain my professional tone. Find myself thinking about our sessions in ways that seem counterproductive. Counterproductive how? You know how? His expression remained neutral, but his eyes held mine with unexpected intensity. I need you to articulate it, Eliza. Fine, I'm attracted to you. The words hung in the air between us. And I suspect these exercises are exacerbating that, which seems ethically questionable. Gabriel was quiet for a moment. Attraction in the therapeutic relationship is common. It doesn't mean we're doing anything wrong, doesn't it? No. His voice was firm, as long as we acknowledge it and maintain appropriate boundaries. Is asking me to kneel before you an appropriate boundary? Something flashed in his eyes, irritation, perhaps? The purpose of that exercise was to explore your response to physically lowering yourself, the psychological implications of submission, and what were your observations? That you found it both uncomfortable and compelling. That it triggered shame, which is often connected to early trauma. He leaned forward, but I'm more interested in your resistance today. What changed since our last session? I looked away. My sister thinks I should try a different therapist. I see. His voice was carefully neutral. And what do you think? I think ... I hesitated, searching for honesty. I think I'm making progress, but I'm not sure if it's the right kind. There's no wrong progress in therapy, Eliza, isn't there? What if I'm just feeding some unhealthy dynamic? What if I only feel better because ... Because? Because I enjoy submitting to you? The words came out before I could stop them. Gabriel was silent for a long moment. That's an important realization, he finally said. Now, we need to understand why. So you're not going to deny that's what's happening? Would denial be helpful? He shook his head. No, I'm not going to deny the power dynamic. It's intentional, therapeutic, and contained. The question is why it resonates with you and what healing might come from exploring it safely. I felt simultaneously relieved and terrified. So we continue? That's your choice. His eyes held mine. But if we do, I need your complete honesty. No more researching to validate or invalidate what happens here. Just presence and truth in this room. I can do that. Good. He stood, authority radiating from his posture. Then stand up, come to the center of the room, and close your eyes. Despite my earlier resistance, I found myself obeying without hesitation. I'd like to give you an assignment, Gabriel said at the end of our sixth session. We had spent the hour with me blindfolded, practicing being present in my body while he occasionally touched my shoulder, hand, or back, always announcing his intention before making contact. I felt both drained and energized, that now familiar mixture of vulnerability and empowerment. What kind of assignment? I asked, adjusting my clothing and trying to ground myself back in the ordinary world. Something to practice between sessions. He handed me a small, smooth stone. I want you to carry this with you at all times for the next week. I turned the stone over in my palm. It was polished black obsidian, cool and heavy. That's it. Just carry a rock? Not quite. His eyes held mine. 3 times each day in public settings. I want you to hold this stone and kneel for exactly 30 seconds. I nearly dropped the stone. You want me to do what? Kneel in public. Not conspicuously find a moment and place where it seems natural. Perhaps tying a shoelace or examining something on a low shelf. Why would I do that? Because avoidance reinforces trauma. Because reclaiming physical postures that make you feel vulnerable in environments where you control the circumstances is empowering. He paused, and because I'm asking you to. That last reason shouldn't have been the most compelling, but it was. What if someone sees me? They almost certainly will. The exercise isn't about not being seen, it's about being seen in a moment of chosen vulnerability and surviving it. I slip the stone into my pocket, and I do this 3 times daily until our next session. Yes, morning, afternoon, and evening. He wrote something in his notebook. I'd like you to journal about each experience. Your thoughts before, your feelings during, and any insights after. This feels like homework from the world's strangest professor. Gabriel smiled slightly. Education and therapy have much in common. Both require practice beyond the classroom. I hesitated. What if I can't do it? If I'm too embarrassed? Then that's valuable information too. His expression softened. But I think you'll surprise yourself, Eliza. You're stronger than you believe. The next day, I found myself in a bookstore, the obsidian stone heavy in my pocket. It had taken me 20 minutes of browsing to work up the courage, but finally, I knelt to examine books on a bottom shelf, heart racing. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, ... A man walked past, glancing down at me. 15 Mississippi, 16 Mississippi, ... My cheeks burned, but I stayed down, pretending to read book spines. 29 Mississippi, 30 Mississippi. I stood, lightheaded with adrenaline, but strangely exhilarated. I had done it. Chosen vulnerability. Survived being seen ... by my third public viewing that day at a park, pretending to adjust my sock. The fear had diminished. By the 5th, 2 days later, I found myself lingering beyond the required 30 seconds, exploring the sensation of surrender in public space. What was happening to me? What was Gabriel awakening? When I returned for our 7th session, journal filled with observations, Gabriel listened intently as I described each experience. And how do you feel now compared to a week ago? He asked when I finished. Less afraid, one admitted, of being seen, of being ... lower than others. Good. His approval sent warmth through me. Now we can move to the next phase, which is taking off the blindfold, he said simply. It's time for you to watch as well as feel. The office seemed different when I arrived for our 7th session. The lighting was dimmer, the air heavier with anticipation. Or perhaps that was just me, hyper-aware of every detail since Gabriel had said we were moving to the next phase. You seem nervous, he observed as I perched on the edge of my usual chair. I'm not sure what to expect. He nodded, accepting this. Before we begin, I want to check in. How are you feeling about our progress so far? The question caught me off guard. Gabriel usually directed our sessions with quiet authority, rarely asking for my assessment of our work. I feel ... I search for the right words. Changed. Like I'm accessing parts of myself I didn't know existed. Is that frightening? Sometimes, I admitted. It's like watching myself become someone else, someone who kneels in public places and thinks about her therapist at night. I hadn't meant to say that last part. Gabriel's expression remained professionally neutral, but his eyes darkened slightly. Do you regret starting this process? No, I said without hesitation. But I do wonder where it ends. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Therapy isn't linear, Eliza. There's no predetermined destination. But there must be goals, outcomes you're working toward, of course. Primarily, your reconnection with your body, your agency, your desires. He paused, but how that manifests is unique to each patient. And how is it manifesting for me? Gabriel studied me for a long moment. You're embracing submission as a pathway to strength. It's uncommon, but not unprecedented. Is that a clinical observation or a personal one? The question hung between us, more challenging than I'd intended. Something shifted in his demeanor. Both, he said finally. And that's becoming a problem. My heart sank. What do you mean? He stood, moving to look out the window, his back to me. I maintain strict boundaries with all my patients. Professional detachment is essential for effective therapy. But I'm finding that increasingly difficult with you. He turned to face me. Your progress is remarkable. The way you've embraced these exercises, pushed through your resistance. He stopped himself. I'm concerned my personal regard for you might be compromising my clinical judgment. I felt simultaneously elated and terrified. Are you saying you're attracted to me too? I'm saying we need to reassess our approach. His voice was controlled, careful. Perhaps return to more convention of therapeutic methods. No, the word came out sharper than I intended. Eliza, I'm making progress. You said so yourself. Yes, but what? It's working for me. Unless ... A horrible thought occurred. Unless you've been lying about embodiment therapy. About all of it. I haven't lied. His voice was firm. Everything we've done has therapeutic precedent and purpose. Then why stop now? Gabriel ran a hand through his hair, the first genuinely unsettled gesture I'd seen from him. Because countertransference is real and I need to acknowledge it before it affects your treatment. Countertransference. I tested the word. That's when the therapist projects feelings onto the patient, right? It's more complicated than that. But essentially, yes. And you're experiencing this ... with me? He nodded once, his face tight with restraint. I should have been concerned. Should have recognized the ethical breach, the professional crossing of lines. Instead, I felt a surge of power. For the first time since entering his office, I wasn't the only vulnerable one. What exactly are you feeling, Gabriel? I pressed, rising from my chair. This conversation isn't therapeutic, he warned, maintaining his distance. I disagree. I think it's the most honest we've been. Eliza, you've asked me to kneel for you, to blindfold myself, to surrender control. The least you can do is answer. One direct question. His jaw tightened. I'm feeling concerned that our therapeutic relationship is veering into inappropriate territory. That's not what I asked. We stood facing each other, the air charged between us. I'm attracted to you, he finally said, each word precise and controlled. And that cannot factor into your treatment. But it already has, hasn't it? I took a step closer. Every exercise, every command, they're all tangled up in this ... whatever this is. Which is exactly why we need to reassess. He moved behind his desk, putting a physical barrier between us. I should refer you to a colleague. No. Panic flared at the thought of starting over with someone new. I don't want another therapist. What you want and what you need therapeutically may be different things. Don't patronize me, I snapped. I'm not confused about what I need. Perhaps not, he conceded. But I have ethical obligations that I take seriously. We stared at each other across his desk at an impasse. So that's it, I finally asked. We just stop. Gabriel was quiet for a long moment. No, he said finally. But we need clear boundaries, stricter protocols. What does that mean? It means we continue the embodiment work, but with more structure. Written exercises, recorded sessions for peer supervision. You want to record us? The thought made me uneasy. Audio only? And only with your consent. He sighed. Eliza, I believe in the work we're doing. I've seen your progress. But we need guardrails to ensure it remains therapeutic. I considered this, the panic slowly subsiding. Will the exercises be the same? Similar, but more formalized? He met my eyes directly. I won't deny the power dynamic that's developing, but I will insist that we contextualize it properly as a therapeutic tool rather than an end in itself. I nodded slowly. I can accept that. Good. He checked his watch. Our time is nearly up. For next week, I'd like you to write about what submission means to you, not in relation to our work in your life generally. I gathered my things, feeling strangely calmer despite the tension of our exchange at the door. I paused. Gabriel? Yes? Thank you for being honest. His smile was sad. That's the foundation of all this, Eliza. Without honesty, there can be no healing. As I left, I wondered which of us needed healing more. True to his word, Gabriel had restructured our sessions. A small audio recorder now sat on his desk, its red light a constant reminder of our new boundaries. We began each session with a formal check-in, reviewing the previous week's homework and establishing clear objectives for the day. Strangely, the added structure didn't diminish the intensity of our work. If anything, the explicit acknowledgement of boundaries made what happened within them feel more significant. I read your essay on submission, Gabriel said, setting my handwritten pages aside. We were 4 weeks into our new arrangement, and the initial awkwardness had faded into a different kind of tension, contained but palpable. And I tried to read his expression. It's insightful, particularly your observation about submission requiring more strength than dominance. I felt a flush of pleasure at his approval. It's something I've been thinking about a lot, I can tell. He pressed the record button on the device. Today, I'd like to explore that idea physically. Despite the weeks of exercises, my pulse quickened. How? I'm going to ask you to hold increasingly challenging poses. Your job is to maintain them until I give permission to release. Like yoga? Similar, but with a different focus. This isn't about flexibility, it's about surrender and control. He stood. We'll start simple. Come to the center of the room. I obeyed, hyper-aware of the recording device capturing our interaction, arms extended parallel to the floor. I raised my arms, feeling slightly foolish. This will become uncomfortable fairly quickly, Gabriel said, circling me slowly. When it does, I want you to notice the thoughts that arise. The impulse to lower your arms, the mental negotiations. Within 2 minutes, my shoulders began to burn. By 5, my arms were trembling with effort. What are you thinking, Eliza? His voice came from behind me. That I want to put my arms down. And yet you don't. Why? Because you haven't given permission? Even saying it sent a shiver through me. Is that the only reason? I hesitated. No, I want to prove I can do it. To me? Or to yourself? Both. He moved to stand in front of me, his eyes meeting mine. What else? The word stuck in my throat. I like pleasing you. Something flickered in his expression. You may lower your arms. The relief was immediate, blood rushing back into my fingertips. How do you feel? Relieved. And I searched for the right word. Accomplished. Good. Now kneel. The familiar posture felt different now, like coming home to a place I'd been afraid to admit I belonged. Back straight, he instructed. Hands behind you. I complied, feeling my chest open, vulnerable. In this position, you're physically submitting, yet your posture projects strength. Gabriel's voice had taken on that deeper quality it sometimes acquired during our most intense moments. That paradox is at the heart of what we're exploring. Is this still therapy? The question slipped out before I could stop it. He crouched to my level, meeting my eyes. Yes, but it's on the edge of conventional practice. Because of us? Because trauma recovery isn't neat or standardized? His gaze was unwavering. Some patients need traditional talk therapy. Others need to reclaim their bodies through movement. He paused, choosing his words carefully. You seem to heal through structured surrender. And that doesn't concern you professionally? It would if I didn't see the results. He stood again, resuming his circling. Your panic attacks have stopped. You're sleeping better. You've described feeling more embodied, more present. All true. Yet something else was growing alongside my recovery, something neither of us named directly. I'm going to touch you now, Gabriel said, pausing behind me. Your shoulders first, then down your arms. If at any point you want me to stop, say pine, remember? I remember. His hands were warm and firm on my shoulders, professional yet somehow intimate. As his fingers trailed down my arms to where my hands were clasped behind me, I fought to keep my breathing steady. What are you feeling? His voice was close to my ear. Everything, I whispered. Too much. His hand stilled. Pine? I shook my head. No, don't stop. Describe everything. Heat, tension, a kind of ache. Where? Everywhere. You touch, and ... I swallowed, places you don't. He moved to face me again, his expression unreadable. Eliza, I need to be very clear about something. My heart sank. Here came the professional boundary speech again. Physical arousal during these exercises is normal, he said matter-of-factly. The body doesn't always distinguish between different types of intense experience. Is that what's happening? Just my body confused? Gabriel considered me for a long moment. No, I don't think it's confusion. The honesty in his voice made me brave. What do you think it is? A natural response to a complex dynamic. He helped me to my feet. One that exists within carefully maintained therapeutic boundaries. But what if I don't want those boundaries? The words escaped before I could reconsider. Gabriel reached past me to switch off the recorder. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. What we want and what serves your healing aren't always the same thing. What if they are? What if ... I took a deep breath. What if this attraction is part of my healing? That's a dangerous rationalization, is it? You said yourself that I'm making progress. He ran a hand through his hair. Eliza, I'm not asking you to do anything unethical, I interrupted. I'm just asking you to acknowledge what's happening, to stop pretending these exercises aren't charged with something more than clinical interest. Gabriel was silent for a long moment. I've already acknowledged my countertransference. That's why we implemented these new protocols. And they're working. We're making progress while maintaining boundaries. So what are you suggesting? I wasn't entirely sure myself. That we stop tiptoeing around it. That we use it rather than fight it. Use it how? I don't know exactly. I looked away suddenly. Unsure, but pretending it isn't there feels dishonest. And isn't honesty the foundation of all this? He sighed, my words from our previous confrontation coming back to him. Yes, it is. We stood in silence, the unspoken tension between us almost a physical presence. Our time is up for today, he finally said, but I'll consider what you've said. As I gathered my things to leave, Gabriel added quietly, you did well today. Eliza, the strength it takes to surrender that completely, it's remarkable. His words followed me home, warming me from within. Gabriel looked different when I arrived for our next session, less composed, with shadows under his eyes suggesting sleepless nights. The recorder was on his desk, but he made no move to turn it on. I've been thinking about our last conversation, he said as soon as I sat down, and my heart hammered in my chest. And I believe we need to try something different today. He gestured to the recorder. No official session, no recording. I raised an eyebrow. That sounds dangerously close to crossing a boundary. Not exactly. He almost smiled. I'm proposing a role reversal. What do you mean? I mean, I'd like you to lead today's exercise. Gabriel's eyes were intent on mine. To experience the other side of our dynamic. The suggestion caught me off guard. In all my fantasies about Gabriel, and there had been many, I'd never imagined myself in the dominant position. Why? 2 reasons, he replied. First, to give you perspective on the nature of control. Second, ... He hesitated, to address the power imbalance that concerns me. You think if I experience being in control, I'll be less? I searched for the right word. Less drawn to submission? He shook his head. No, but perhaps more conscious of your choice to submit, more aware of the responsibility on both sides. I considered this. What would I have to do? Direct me? Choose. Exercises. Decide when they begin and end. His voice remained steady, but I detected a slight tension in his shoulders. Within appropriate boundaries, of course, and those are no romantic or explicitly sexual content, no physical contact, beyond what we've already established in our sessions. Nothing that would compromise either of our dignity or safety. I nodded slowly. When do we start? Now. He sat back, waiting. What would you like me to do, Eliza? The sudden shift in power left me momentarily speechless. I'd spent weeks following Gabriel's instructions, surrendering to his guidance. Now he was looking at me expectantly, waiting for direction. Stand, I finally said, testing how it felt to give a command. He complied immediately, moving to the center of the room. Turn around, Face away from me. Again, he obeyed without hesitation. Tell me what you're feeling, I said, unconsciously echoing his usual questions. Vulnerable, he answered honestly. Exposed. Why? You're fully clothed, standing in your own office, because I've ceded control to you. His voice was quieter than usual, and I don't know what you'll ask of me. I circled him slowly, understanding for the first time the power he held during our usual sessions. Kneel, I said, curious to see if he would. Gabriel paused, then gracefully lowered himself to one knee, then the other. The sight of him kneeling before me sent an unexpected thrill through my body. How does that feel? I asked. Humbling, he replied. And strangely liberating? Liberating how? He considered this. There's freedom in surrender and not having to maintain control for a moment. Is that what you see in me when I kneel for you? His eyes met mine. Among other things. What other things? Trust, courage, vulnerability freely given rather than taken. He shifted slightly. May I stand now? I hesitated, enjoying the reversal more than I'd expected. Not yet. I want you to close your eyes and tell me something you've never told a patient before. Gabriel frowned. That crosses an ethical line, Eliza. Not if it's your choice, what? To reveal. I was surprised by my own boldness. Nothing explicitly personal, just something honest. He closed his eyes, tension visible in his jaw. After a long moment, he spoke. Sometimes I doubt the efficacy of traditional therapy. Wonder if we're just putting bandages on wounds that need different treatment entirely. Is that why you developed this approach, these exercises, Hartley? His eyes remained closed. I was also drawn to the psychological aspects of power exchange, the therapeutic potential of controlled surrender. Before me, were there other patients you used these methods with? Yes, a few. And did you feel ... I swallowed. What you feel with me? His eyes opened, meeting mine directly. No, the simple admission hung in the air between us. You can stand now, I said softly. Gabriel rose to his feet, maintaining eye contact. Your turn to answer honestly, Eliza. How did it feel? Being on that side of the dynamic? Powerful, I admitted, but not as ... fulfilling as the other way. Why do you think that is? I considered this carefully. Because submission feels like coming home, like finding a place I belong. I paused. Giving commands feels like ... playing a role. Gabriel nodded, as if my answer confirmed something he'd suspected. That's why I wanted you to experience it. To understand it's a choice, your choice, not something I'm imposing on you. I never thought you were, perhaps not consciously. He moved back to his chair. But the therapeutic relationship has inherent power imbalances. I needed to be sure you were choosing this dynamic, not just accepting it because of my position. And now? Now I believe you're making an informed choice. He studied me. Which makes our work more ethically complex, not less. Because I'm choosing to submit to you specifically, not just to the therapy. Yes, his honesty was refreshing. It means we need to be even more careful about boundaries. Even with the role reversal today, especially because of it. Gabriel leaned forward. What we just did, sharing that kind of honesty, it changes things. For better or worse, that depends on what happens next. He checked his watch. Our time is almost up. But we didn't do a formal session. No, this was something else. Something necessary. He stood. For next week, I'd like you to write about today. How it felt to be in control. What you learned about yourself and about me. At the door, I turned back. Gabriel, yes? When you knelt ... I hesitated. Did you feel what I feel? That same ... intensity? His expression softened. Yes, Eliza. I did. I left his office with my thoughts swirling, understanding for the first time that whatever was happening between us wasn't one-sided. The line between therapist and patient had blurred, but something clearer was emerging in its place, something honest, mutual, and increasingly difficult to deny. I didn't expect to see Gabriel outside our sessions. Our relationship, whatever. It was existed only within the controlled environment of his office. neatly contained between the hours of 2 o'clock and 3 p.m. every Tuesday dot. So when I spotted him across the crowded university library, I froze. He was deep in conversation with the silver-haired woman, gesturing animatedly as he spoke. He wore glasses I'd never seen before, and a tailored blazer over a casual shirt. Dr. Gabriel Reed in his academic persona. I should have walked away. Instead, I found myself moving closer, ostensibly browsing books while straining to hear their conversation. Double quotes ... embodiment approaches show particular promise for complex trauma, Gabriel was saying. The case studies in my latest paper demonstrate significant efficacy compared to traditional cognitive methods. The ethics committee still has concerns, the woman replied. The intimacy of these techniques requires extraordinary boundaries, which I maintain rigorously, Gabriel said. Every session is documented. Consent protocols are explicit and ongoing. I felt a flush creep up my neck. If only the ethics committee knew about our unrecorded role reversal session, or the way his touch lingered during our exercises. Nevertheless, the woman continued, the university requires additional oversight for any approach involving physical contact or power dynamics. I understand, Gabriel nodded, though I maintain that healing sometimes requires pushing conventional boundaries. Just be careful, Gabriel, she said, her tone softening. Your career doesn't need another complication. Another complication? What did that mean? Before I could ponder this, Gabriel glanced up and saw me. His expression flickered with surprise, then something unreadable, before settling into professional neutrality. Dr. Marshall, excuse me a moment, he said to the woman. I see one of my students. He approached me with measured steps, keeping a professional distance. Eliza, he greeted me, voice carefully modulated. What brings you to the research library? Research, I replied lamely, holding up a random book I pulled from the shelf. Advanced Statistical Analysis in Ornithology, he read from the cover, one eyebrow raised. I wasn't aware of your interest in bird migration patterns. It's new, I fumbled, feeling foolish. A hint of amusement crossed his face. I see. He glanced back at his colleague, who was watching us curiously. Dr. Marshall is the head of our ethics committee. She was just reviewing my research protocols. The implied warning was clear. Be careful. I won't keep you, I said, moving to replace the book. Actually, Gabriel said, if you have a moment, I'd appreciate your perspective. As a graduate student on the new department guidelines, he turned to the woman. Dr. Marshall, this is Eliza Cohen, one of our promising psychology graduate students. I blinked at the fabricated identity, but quickly composed myself as he led me toward his colleague. Ms. Cohen has been providing valuable feedback on student experiences with our new curriculum, Gabriel explained smoothly. I shook the woman's hand, playing along. It's an honor to meet you, Dr. Marshall. Your work on trauma-informed pedagogical approaches has been influential in my studies. Her eyes lit with interest. Oh, which aspects particularly? I silently thanked my psychology minor as I formulated a plausible answer. Your integration of neuroscience research with practical classroom applications. The connection between physical states and cognitive processing. She nodded approvingly. Precisely what Gabriel's work explores from the therapeutic angle? Yes, I agreed, avoiding Gabriel's eyes. Dr. Reed's approach is ... transformative. Well, Dr. Marshall gathered her papers. I should let you two discuss those curriculum matters. Gabriel, remember what I said about documentation? After she left, Gabriel exhaled slowly. That was ... unexpected. I'm sorry, I said. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. Yet you did. His voice held no anger, just observation. I was curious about you. Outside our sessions, he glanced around, ensuring no one was within earshot. We should maintain clear boundaries in public, Eliza. Hence, my sudden promotion to graduate student. A necessary improvisation. Who was she? I asked. Really? Exactly who I said. The head of the university ethics committee and my research supervisor. And what did she mean about your career not needing another complication? Gabriel's expression tightened. That's not relevant to our work together, isn't it? You know almost everything about me, while I know almost nothing about you. That's the nature of therapy. Is that all this is? I challenged quietly. His eyes met mine, intense despite our public setting. You know, it's not, which is precisely why we need these boundaries. A student walked past, momentarily interrupting our charged exchange. You were quite convincing, Gabriel observed once we were alone again. Your knowledge of psychological theory is impressive. I read a lot. I hesitated, especially since starting therapy with you. Something like pride flickered in his eyes. Your curiosity serves you well. Gabriel, I lowered my voice. Seeing you here in your other life, it makes everything feel more real. It is real, Eliza. His voice was equally quiet. That's what concerns me. Will this affect our sessions? He considered this. No, but it reminds me of the importance of maintaining proper boundaries. More recordings, more structure, perhaps. He checked his watch. I have a faculty meeting in 15 minutes, of course. I stepped back, adopting a student's formal demeanor. Thank you for the feedback on my research, Professor Reeve. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. You're a quick study, Miss Cohen. As he walked away, I realized I'd glimpsed something important. Gabriel had a life, a reputation, a career at stake. Whatever was developing between us endangered more than just therapeutic boundaries. Yet somehow, this only made me want him more. Our next session began with more formality than usual. Gabriel had rearranged his office, the chairs positioned farther apart, the recorder prominently placed between us. Even his demeanor was more clinical, as if our encounter at the library had reset our boundaries. Today we're going to work with restraint, he announced after our initial check-in. It's an important aspect of embodiment therapy for trauma survivors who've experienced powerlessness. Restraint? I repeated, you mean physically? Yes. He produced a length of soft blue silk rope. With your explicit consent, I'll bind your wrists loosely. You'll be able to free yourself with minimal effort if needed. Despite the butterflies in my stomach, I nodded. Verbal consent, please, Gabriel insisted. And remember your safe word. Pine, I said, the word familiar now. I consent to having my wrists bound. Thank you. He activated the recorder. Session 12 with patient EC, exploring controlled restraint as a therapeutic tool for reclaiming agency after trauma. The formality was for the recording, I knew. Documentation to protect us both. Please stand and extend your hands. I obeyed, watching as he approached with the rope. His fingers were steady as he wrapped the silk around my wrists, binding them, together with a knot that was secure but not tight. How does that feel? He asked. Strange, I admitted. Vulnerable. That's natural. He circled me slowly. Being physically restrained often triggers complex emotions, fear, anxiety, even anger. I don't feel afraid, I said. Just aware of my body, of my limitations. Good. That awareness is our goal. He stopped behind me. Now close your eyes and focus on your breathing. I did as instructed, the sensation of restraint intensifying with my vision removed. Many trauma survivors disconnect from their bodies when feeling vulnerable. Gabriel's voice came from somewhere to my right. This exercise helps anchor you in your physical experience. Is that why I sometimes felt numb? Before, likely yes. He moved again, his presence palpable even without seeing him. What are you feeling now? My heartbeat, it's faster. I focused on the sensations. My skin feels sensitive, especially where the rope touches. That's present moment awareness. The opposite of dissociation. His voice was closer now. I'm going to touch your shoulder. Ready? Yes. His hand rested gently on my left shoulder, the warmth of his palm seeping through my blouse. Still with me? He asked. Yes. Good. Now I want you to remember a moment when you felt powerless. Not your primary trauma, something smaller, more manageable. I thought of my ex-boyfriend, the way he dismissed my opinions in front of friends, making me feel small. I have one, I said, tension creeping into my body. Notice what happens physically as you remember. My shoulders are tight, my breathing is shallow. That's the body's stress response. His hand remained steady on my shoulder. Now, while maintaining that memory, also stay aware of your current safety, the floor beneath you. My hand on your shoulder, the knowledge that you can open your eyes or release yourself at any time. I tried to hold both realities simultaneously, the memory and the present moment. It's difficult, I admitted. The memory wants to take over. That's how trauma works, Gabriel explained. It hijacks your present. But with practice, you can remain grounded even while processing difficult emotions. His hand moved from my shoulder, trailing lightly down my arm to where my wrists were bound. The restraint is a physical metaphor, he continued. Even when circumstances limit you, you retain inner autonomy, the power to choose your response. Something about his words, combined with the sensation of being bound and the lingering memory of powerlessness, triggered an unexpected wave of emotion. Tears slipped from beneath my closed eyelids. Eliza? Gabriel's voice sharpened with concern. I'm okay, I managed. It's just ... intense. Too intense? I shook my head. No, keep going. His fingers brushed mine, the touch sending electricity up my arms despite my emotional state. I'm going to guide you to kneel now, he said softly. I'll support you. His hands steady on my elbows, he helped me lower myself to the carpet. The position, familiar from our earlier sessions, felt profoundly different with my wrists bound. Breathe. Through any emotions that arise, Gabriel instructed, his voice gentle but firm. Stay present with them without judgment. More tears came, along with a strange sense of release. I felt simultaneously vulnerable and powerful, bound yet free in a way I couldn't articulate. You're doing beautifully, Gabriel murmured the praise. Sent warmth through me, tangling with the other sensations flooding my system. My breath quickened, and suddenly the emotions felt overwhelming, too big, too complex, too revealing. Pine, I whispered. Gabriel immediately moved to untie my wrists. Eyes open, Eliza, back to the present. I blinked up at him, tears still wet on my cheeks as the silk fell away from my skin. Are you all right? He asked, professional concern evident in his expression. Yes, I said, surprised to find it was true. I just needed a moment. He offered me a tissue, then water, giving me space to compose myself before helping me back to my chair. That's the first time you've used your safe word, he observed, turning off the recorder. How are you feeling now? Raw, I admitted, but clearer somehow. Gabriel nodded. Using the safe word is not failure, Eliza. It's self-regulation, recognizing your limits and honoring them. I know. I dried my eyes. It wasn't fear. I felt too exposed, like you could see everything. Something soft in his expression. That vulnerability is powerful and sacred. Sacred? Worthy of reverence, he clarified. To witness someone's true vulnerability is a privilege. That demands respect. The way he looked at me, then with genuine admiration rather than clinical assessment, made my breath catch. Is that how you see me? I asked quietly. As sacred? Gabriel hesitated, professional boundaries warring with honesty. I see your courage, he finally said. Your willingness to face what frightens you, and yes, there is something sacred in that. We sat in silence for a moment, the air between us charged with unspoken words. Our time is up, he eventually said, though he made no move to end the session. But I want to make sure you're grounded before you leave. I'm okay, I assured him. Better than okay. He studied me, then nodded. For next week, I'd like you to journal about today's experience. The emotions that arose, and particularly what happened just before you used your safe word. I will. At the door, I paused. Gabriel? Yes, thank you for stopping immediately, for making it safe to say no. His smile was gentle. That's the foundation of all this, Eliza. Without safety, there can be no surrender. As I left, I realized something fundamental had shifted. By giving me the power to stop him, and by respecting that power instantly when I used it, Gabriel had deepened my trust in him beyond measure, and with that trust came a willingness to go even further next time, The week after our restraint session, I dreamed of Gabriel nearly every night. Dreams where the rope didn't end at my wrists, where his touch didn't stop at my shoulder, where the professional boundaries between us dissolved completely. I arrived at our next appointment with these dreams still vivid in my mind, making it difficult to meet his eyes. "You seem distracted today," Gabriel observed after our check-in. "Just processing last week," I said, not entirely untruthfully. He nodded. "Using your safe word was significant. How have you felt since then?" "Strangely empowered," I admitted. "Knowing I could stop things, it made me feel safer. More in control, even while surrendering control." "That paradox is precisely the therapeutic value," Gabriel said, satisfaction evident in his voice. "True. Submission requires complete agency. Otherwise, it's just compliance or coercion." I nodded, thinking of my ex-boyfriend again, how his dominance had felt oppressive rather than liberating. "I've been thinking about our progression," Gabriel continued. "You've shown remarkable resilience and growth these past months." "Thank you. Today, I'd like to take our work to a deeper level, if you're willing." He activated the recorder. Session 13 with patient EC, exploring complete submission as a pathway to reclaiming personal agency. My pulse quickened. Complete submission? A more immersive experience than we've attempted before, he explained. It would involve multiple elements: restraint, blindfolding, positional commands, combined with guided visualization. For what purpose? To create a controlled experience of total vulnerability, followed by empowered reintegration. He met my eyes directly. It's intense, but potentially transformative for patients who've experienced violation of boundaries. I considered this. Would you touch me? Minimal contact only, similar to previous sessions. Hands, shoulders, perhaps face. His voice remained clinical. The focus isn't physical sensation, but psychological surrender. And the safe word applies as always? Absolutely. 1 pine to pause, 2 to stop the exercise, 3 to end the session entirely. He leaned forward slightly. This is entirely your choice, Eliza. We can continue with less intensive approaches, but I didn't want less. I wanted more of this therapy, of the feelings it evoked, of Gabriel himself. I consent, I said clearly, to everything you've described. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. Thank you for your trust. We'll proceed slowly with frequent check-ins. The next hour unfolded like a choreographed dance. Gabriel first had me change into loose, comfortable clothing he provided, yoga pants and a simple t-shirt in his private bathroom. When I returned, he dimmed the lights and moved the furniture to create an open space in the center of the office. Kneel here, he instructed, indicating a cushion placed on the floor. I complied. The now familiar posture, feeling like coming home. Hands behind your back. Again, I obeyed, feeling my breath quicken as he approached with the blue silk rope. I'm going to bind your wrists, he narrated, his voice low and steady. Not tightly, but securely. The silk whispered against my skin as he worked, his fingers careful never to linger too long. Now for the blindfold. Darkness enveloped me as a soft cloth covered my eyes, tied gently but firmly behind my head. Still with me? Gabriel asked. Yes. Good. Now just breathe. Feel the floor beneath you, the air around you. Without sight, my other senses heightened immediately. I could hear Gabriel moving around me, smell his subtle cologne when he came near, feel the slight change in air pressure as he circled. In this state, he said from somewhere behind me, you're physically restricted but mentally free. Notice how your attention moves to sounds, sensations, thoughts. I nodded, focusing on the experience of being present in my body while completely vulnerable to whatever might come. I'm going to touch your shoulder now, he warned, then did so, his hand warm and steady. What are you feeling? He asked. Present, I replied, aware of everything. My heartbeat, my breathing, the points where the rope touches my skin. Good. His hand moved to my other shoulder. Now I want you to visualize yourself as completely whole and autonomous, even in this position of physical surrender. I tried to hold the paradoxical image bound yet free, submissive yet powerful. How does that feel? His voice had moved, now coming from directly in front of me. Strange, I admitted. But somehow, that integration of seeming opposites is our goal. His fingers touch my chin lightly, tilting my face upward. Now I want you to do something difficult. I want you to visualize the moment you felt most powerless in your life while maintaining awareness of your current safety and choice. The memory came instantly the night my college boyfriend wouldn't take no for an answer, his weight pinning me down, my voice frozen in my throat. My breathing quickened, panic rising. Stay with me, Eliza. Gabriel's voice anchored me. You're safe here, in control, even when yielding control. It's hard, I whispered. I know. His hand moved to cup my cheek, an unprecedented intimacy that somehow steadied rather than unsettled. Me, that you are not there anymore. You are here, choosing this experience, free to end it at any word. Tears slipped beneath my blindfold as I held both realities simultaneously, past trauma and present choice. That's it, Gabriel encouraged. Feel it all without being consumed by it. His thumb brushed away a tear from my cheek, the gesture so tender it nearly broke me. Gabriel, I whispered, his name a plea for something I couldn't articulate. I'm here, he assured me, his voice closer now. Tell me what you need. What I needed was beyond the scope of therapy, beyond professional ethics. Yet, in that moment of complete vulnerability, with the past and present converging, honesty felt like the only possible response. You, I said simply, not as my therapist. I felt him go still, his hand withdrawing from my face. Eliza, he began, his voice strained. I know, I interrupted. I know it's wrong, impossible, but it's the truth. Silence stretched between us, heavy with implication. Finally, Gabriel spoke, his voice carefully controlled. I'm going to remove the blindfold now. Light flooded my vision as the cloth fell away. Gabriel knelt before me, his expression a complex mixture of concern, restraint, and something else, something he was trying desperately to conceal. Turn around, he said quietly. I'll untie your wrists. Once I was free, he helped me to my feet and guided me to my chair, maintaining professional distance now. What I'm feeling, he said after a long moment, is not relevant to your healing, and acting on it would be a serious ethical breach. I know that, I said. Intellectually, I know it. But emotionally, I looked away. Emotionally, I've never felt more connected to anyone. Gabriel sighed, running a hand through his hair. That's not uncommon in therapeutic relationships, especially ones involving vulnerability and power dynamics. Don't, I said sharply. Don't reduce this to clinical terms. He met my eyes then, his professional mask slipping. What would you have me do, Eliza? Violate my ethical code? Take advantage of a therapeutic relationship? Is that what it would be, taking advantage? From an ethical standpoint, yes. Regardless of mutual feelings. I latched onto his words. So there are mutual feelings. Gabriel closed his eyes briefly. This conversation isn't helping your healing journey. Maybe healing isn't linear, I challenged. Maybe it's messy and complicated and doesn't always fit into neat ethical boxes. That may be true, he conceded. But my professional responsibilities aren't optional. We sat in tense silence, the air between us charged with everything we couldn't act upon. Where does this leave us? I finally asked. Gabriel considered this carefully. We have two options. We can acknowledge these feelings, put them aside, and continue our therapeutic work with appropriate boundaries. Or I can refer you to a colleague. The thought of starting over with someone new was unbearable. I don't want another therapist. Then, we maintain boundaries, he said firmly, which means processing these feelings as part of your therapy, not acting on them. I nodded slowly, accepting the inevitability of his position, even as part of me rebelled against it. Our time is up, Gabriel noted, though neither of us moved. How are you feeling? Confused, I admitted, but also seen in a way I've never experienced before. Something softened in his expression. That visibility, that authentic connection is valuable, Eliza, even within professional boundaries. As I gathered my things to leave, Gabriel added quietly, For what it's worth, today's session demonstrated extraordinary courage and progress. Your ability to integrate past trauma with present agency was remarkable. His words were professional, but his eyes told a different story, one of admiration, connection, and carefully restrained desire. I left his office knowing two things with absolute certainty. I was healing in ways I'd never thought possible, and we were approaching a precipice that neither of us could safely navigate. I didn't go back the following week, or the week after. Each Tuesday at 1:45 p.m., I sat in my car outside Gabriel's office building, heart racing, unable to make myself walk inside. My confession had changed everything. The careful balance we'd maintained between therapist and patient, dominant and submissive, professional and personal, had been irreparably disrupted. On the third Tuesday, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown known number. Eliza, I'm concerned about your missed appointments. Please confirm you're all right. Grace stared at the message, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Even this reaching out between sessions crossed a boundary. Yet the fact that he'd done so sent warmth through me. I'm okay. Just needed space to think. His reply came seconds later. Understandable. My door remains open when you're ready. I almost went in then. Almost. Instead, I drove to my sister's house. Desperate for perspective from someone who knew me before Gabriel, before therapy, before this consuming obsession. You look terrible, Hannah said when she opened the door. What happened? I think I'm in love with my therapist, I blurted. Hannah's eyes widened. Oh shit. I collapsed onto her couch, the confession unleashing a torrent of emotion. Between sobs, I told her everything, the embodiment therapy, the power dynamics, the mutual attraction we'd acknowledged but couldn't act on. That sounds ... Hannah hesitated, choosing her words carefully, intense. It's been transformative, I defended. I've never felt so present in my own body, so aware of my choices. But is it actual therapy or something else disguised as therapy? The question hit me like a slap. What are you implying? Just that this relationship sounds complicated, Eliza, blurry, and your therapist has all the power. That's not true. I have safe words. I can stop any exercise. But did you ever research this embodiment therapy? Get a second opinion? I looked away. It's legitimate. He showed me research textbooks and the romantic feelings. Are those part of the treatment plan? No, I admitted. That's why I stopped going. Hannah sighed, softening. Look, I'm glad you're feeling better. I really am. You seem more present than you have in years. But I'm worried this guy might be taking advantage. He's not, I insisted. If anything, he's been rigidly ethical, refusing to cross lines even when I wanted him to. Then what's the problem? The problem is I can't stop thinking about him, about us, about what could happen if he wasn't my therapist. Hannah was quiet for a moment. Maybe that's your answer then? Maybe you need a different therapist so this guy can just be a guy. The thought had occurred to me too, but the reality was more complicated. Our entire relationship is built on the therapeutic context. Outside of that, we barely know each other. That's my point, sis. You've constructed this intense connection within an artificial framework. What happens when that framework is gone? I had no answer for that. Later that night, lying in Hannah's guest bedroom, I received another text. I've been reflecting on our therapeutic relationship. If you wish to continue your healing journey, perhaps a colleague would be more appropriate. I can provide referrals. If not, I understand. Either way, I believe in your continued growth. The formal tone broke my heart, even as I recognized its necessity. Gabriel was doing the ethical thing, right thing by creating distance, and I hated him for it. 3 weeks after my last session with Gabriel, I found myself kneeling on my bedroom floor, the obsidian stone he'd given me months ago clutched in my palm. Not because he'd instructed me to, but because the position brought clarity. In the silence of my apartment, I'd begun practicing my own version of the exercises we'd done together, mindful breathing, body scanning, even self-administered restraint using scarves tied loosely around my wrists. It wasn't the same without his guidance, his voice, his presence. But it was something a way to continue the journey we'd started. I declined Gabriel's offer of referrals. The thought of explaining everything to a new therapist was exhausting. Instead, I threw myself into research, reading everything I could. Find about trauma recovery, embodiment practices, and power dynamics in therapeutic settings. I started a journal, documenting my daily experiences with brutal honesty, day 17 without therapy. Woke from another dream about G. The line between therapeutic submission and personal desire remains blurred. Am I healing or just obsessing? Both. Day 23. Tried the restraint exercise alone. Different, without someone witnessing. Still valuable. Noticed how my breathing changes when I surrender control, even to myself. Day 30. Realized today that I haven't had a panic attack in 3 months. Whatever else happened between us, G gave me tools that worked out in my clearest moments. I recognized that what I felt for Gabriel was complicated by the therapeutic context. Transference, he would call it. The projection of feelings onto a therapist who represented safety, understanding, and control. But in my darkest moments, alone at night, I knew it was more than that. Something genuine had developed between us, something neither of us had planned or wanted, but couldn't deny that the question was what to do about it. Hannah's suggestion lingered in my mind, end the therapeutic relationship to explore the possibility of a personal one, but that felt like a fantasy. Gabriel was a professional. He wouldn't risk his career, his reputation, his ethical standing for a former patient, would he? I found myself driving past the university where he taught, hoping for another glimpse of him in his academic life. Checking social media for any trace of Dr. Gabriel. Read. Even walking by his office building on days I knew he didn't have appointments. This wasn't healing. It was fixation. On the 6-week anniversary of our last session, I made a decision. I needed closure, not just with therapy, but with Gabriel himself. One final conversation to acknowledge what had happened between us and why it had to end. Wrote an email, deleted it, wrote another. Finally, I settled on simple honesty. Gabriel, I've been continuing the embodiment work on my own. It's helping. You were right about many things, particularly the connection between physical surrender and psychological freedom. I'd like to meet once more, not as therapist and patient, but as two people who shared an important journey to find proper closure, so we can both move forward. If you're willing, please suggest a public place where we could talk briefly. Eliza, his reply came the next morning. Eliza, I'm glad the techniques are proving beneficial. Your resilience has always been remarkable. While I understand your desire for closure, meeting outside the therapeutic context would be inappropriate given the circumstances of our last session. Perhaps in time, with sufficient distance from our professional relationship, such a conversation might be possible. For now, I believe continued separation serves your healing best, with respect and confidence in your journey. Gabriel, the rejection stung, but I recognized its wisdom. Neither of us was ready. Perhaps we never would be. That night, I knelt one last time with the obsidian stone, then placed it in a box with my therapy journal and Gabriel's email. Not discarding them, but setting them aside. It was time to move forward on my own. 6 months passed. Spring turned to summer, then autumn. I started a new job teaching at a community college, joined a trauma survivor support group. Even went on a few dates that went nowhere. The obsession with Gabriel faded gradually, like a photograph left in sunlight, still visible, but less vivid. I thought of him less frequently, though certain triggers would bring him sharply to mind. The scent of his cologne on a stranger, a blue silk scarf in a shop window, the word pine in casual conversation. Progress, not perfection. A phrase from my support group that became a personal mantra. Then came the conference, a regional psychology symposium where I'd volunteered to help with registration. I hadn't checked the speaker list, hadn't thought to. So I was completely unprepared when I looked up from the name badges to see Gabriel standing before me, equally shocked. Eliza, he said, my name catching in his throat. Dr. Reed, I managed, reverting to formality out of self-preservation. I didn't know you were presenting. Last-minute substitution. He looked different, his hair slightly longer, a hint of silver at his temples that hadn't been there before. You're working the conference? Volunteering? I teach psychology now. Community college level. Something like pride flickered in his eyes. That's wonderful. The line behind him grew restless. I handed him his materials with shaking hands. Your panel is in room 302, second floor, end of the hall. Thank you. He hesitated, then added quietly, It's good to see you, Eliza. I managed a nod, unable to trust my voice. For the rest of the morning, I was hyper-aware of his presence in the building, my body attuned to the possibility of encountering him again. When lunch break came, I escaped to a quiet courtyard. Needing space to process Dot, I was sitting alone on a bench when his voice came from behind me. May I join you? I turned to find Gabriel standing there, conference folder in hand, expression cautious. Yes, I said after a moment. That would be okay. He sat at the opposite end of the bench, maintaining a respectful distance. For a while, neither of us spoke. Your presentation went well? I finally asked. It did. On trauma-informed. Educational approaches, actually. He glanced at me. Something you might find relevant in your teaching. I nodded. I've been incorporating embodiment exercises in my classroom. Modified, of course, but effective. That single quotes S. That's excellent. The pride in his voice was unmistakable. You've taken the work and made it your own. I had a good teacher, I said. Simply silence fell again, less uncomfortable than before. How have you been, Eliza? Truly? I considered deflecting, offering platitudes. But Gabriel had always demanded honesty, and some habits died hard. Better, I said truthfully. The panic attacks never returned. I still practice the techniques. I've built a life that feels mine. I'm glad. And you? He looked away. Professionally successful, personally? He shrugged slightly, questioning some choices, regrets. I asked, heart quickening. Not about maintaining boundaries, he clarified. That was necessary. But perhaps about how abruptly things ended, the lack of proper closure. I asked for that closure, I reminded him. You declined. I wasn't ready then. Neither were you, I think. And now? The question slipped out before I could reconsider. Gabriel turned to face me fully. Now, I believe we could have a conversation as equals, if you're still interested. I studied him, the familiar intensity of his gaze, the careful control in his posture. So much the same, yet our context completely transformed. I'd like that, I said quietly. Not today, but soon. He nodded, understanding. My contact information is the same. As we rose to return to the conference, Gabriel paused. For what it's worth, Eliza, seeing you now confident, professional, clearly thriving confirms what I always believed about your potential, even when you asked me to crawl. The words emerged lighter than I intended, almost teasing. A smile touched his lips. Especially then. True strength often emerges through unexpected pathways. We walked back together, not touching, not crossing any lines. Just two professionals with a complex shared history, finding their way toward whatever came next. Not a perfect ending, but perhaps a new beginning. 3 weeks after the conference, I sat across from Gabriel at a quiet corner table in a cafe far from both his office and my college. Neutral territory. We'd exchanged a few carefully worded emails, establishing parameters. For this meeting, not therapy, not a date. Just conversation between two adults with a complicated history. You look well, he said, studying me over his coffee cup. Teaching agrees with me, I replied. Though it's strange being on the other side of the power dynamic. How so? Now I'm the one setting boundaries, holding space, guiding others. I smiled slightly. I find myself channeling you sometimes in how I structure that authority. Something flickered in his eye, surprise, perhaps, or recognition. That's the mark of true learning. Taking what resonates and making it your own. The conversation flowed more easily than I'd expected, covering safe topics, my teaching, his research, books we'd both read. The charged energy between us remained, but transformed, less desperate, more measured. I've been curious, I finally ventured, setting down my cup. What happened after I stopped coming to therapy? Professionally, I mean, Gabriel considered this. I took a sabbatical from private practice, focused on teaching and research. He paused. I also underwent peer supervision regarding our case. You discussed me with colleagues? The thought made me uneasy. Anonymously, he clarified. I needed professional perspective on where the boundaries had blurred and why. And what conclusion did they reach? That the methodology itself wasn't flawed, but that I'd become too personally invested. His honesty was refreshing, if uncomfortable. They suggested I limit embodiment approaches to group settings for a while. I'm sorry if I complicated your work. Don't be. His voice was firm. The responsibility was mine as the professional in the relationship. I studied him, noticing the tension he carried in his shoulders, the careful way he held himself. You're still punishing yourself, I observed. Gabriel looked surprised at my insight. Perhaps ethical boundaries exist for good reasons. Yes, but we maintained them, didn't we? Despite what we felt. We did. He met my eyes directly, though it was challenging. The understatement made me smile, very challenging. A moment of shared understanding passed between us, lightening the atmosphere. May I ask you something personal? I ventured. You can ask. His caution was evident. What do you miss most? About our sessions. Gabriel was silent for a long moment, weighing his response. Your courage, he finally said. The way you surrendered to the process despite your fears. It was double quotes, he hesitated, inspiring to witness. I miss your voice, I admitted, the way it grounded me when I felt lost. His expression softened. I'm glad I could provide that anchor. Do you ever wonder, I asked carefully, what might have happened? If we'd met differently, yes. The simple admission hung between us. And Gabriel's eyes held mine. And I think it would have been significant. But that's not the path we took. Could we find a new path? The question emerged before I could reconsider. That depends, he said thoughtfully, on whether we can truly leave our original dynamic behind. How would we know? He considered this. Time, distance from our therapeutic relationship. Establishing a new foundation based on who we are now, not who we were then. I'd like to try, I said softly, as would I. His smile was cautious but genuine, slowly, with clear boundaries. Always with boundaries, I observed dryly. Some things don't change, Eliza. The way he said my name like it meant something. Precious sent warmth through me. But perhaps the nature of those boundaries can evolve. As we left the cafe, Gabriel hesitated before asking, would you be willing to meet again, perhaps for dinner next week? I would, I replied, feeling strangely shy. But this time, I choose the restaurant. His smile acknowledged my subtle reclaiming of power. I look forward to following your lead. Over the next 2 months, Gabriel and I constructed something new. Tentative dinners became comfortable lunches. Professional conversations expanded to include personal histories, childhood memories, favorite books, the ordinary foundations of connection that our unusual beginning had bypassed. I learned that Gabriel had a younger sister with autism, explaining his intuitive understanding of different sensory experiences. He discovered my passion for classical piano, abandoned after my trauma, but recently reclaimed. We were careful never to recreate the power dynamics of our therapeutic relationship. No kneeling, no commands, no surrendering control. Instead, we explored what equality between us might look like. It wasn't always easy. Sometimes a certain tone in his voice would trigger memories of our sessions, sending a familiar shiver through me. Occasionally, I'd find myself unconsciously adopting submissive postures in his presence, then overcorrecting with forced assertiveness. This is strange for you too, isn't it? I asked one evening as we walked through a sculpture garden, maintaining a careful distance between us. Recalibrating patterns is always challenging, he acknowledged, especially ones that were effective in their context. Do you miss it? I asked bluntly, having that authority. Gabriel considered this with characteristic thoughtfulness. What I miss is the clarity. Therapy has defined roles, clear boundaries. This, he gestured between us, is uncharted, scary. Terrifying, he admitted with a small smile. And compelling. We reached a secluded bench and sat, watching sunset paint the sculptures in golden light. Gabriel, I said quietly, we've been circling something for weeks, I know. At some point, we need to address the physical attraction between us. He nodded, his profile tense in the fading light. The ethical guidelines suggest a minimum of 2 years between termination of therapy and any personal relationship. It's been 8 months, I noted. Double quotes, yes. So we wait? Gabriel turned to face me fully. That would be the prudent approach. And if I don't feel prudent, I challenged. If I'm tired of putting my life on hold because of ethical guidelines that don't account for our specific situation. Eliza, I'm not your patient anymore, Gabriel. I haven't been for a long time. The power imbalance doesn't simply disappear, he countered. The knowledge I have of you, the vulnerability you showed me, it creates an inherent asymmetry. Then let me see you vulnerable, I suggested. Let me know you the way you know me. He went still. What are you proposing? The idea crystallized as I spoke it. One night, my apartment, I asked questions. You answer with complete honesty, no therapeutic distance, no professional barriers, and then we decide if this us is worth pursuing further or if we're just chasing echoes of what we had before. Gabriel was quiet for a long moment. When? Tomorrow night, I said, heart racing, unless you need more time to consider. No, his decision seemed to surprise even him. Tomorrow works. The next evening, Gabriel arrived at my apartment precisely on time, looking both familiar and strange in casual clothes rather than his professional attire. I prepared the space carefully neutral, comfortable, without any elements that might trigger memories of our therapy. Ground rules, I said as we settled in my living room, deliberately echoing his clinical phrasing. Complete honesty. Either of us can decline to answer, but no half-truths or deflections, and we both have a safe word. Pine, he asked with a raised eyebrow. Something new, I suggested. Sunrise, sunrise, he repeated, to signify a new beginning. I nodded. Exactly. For 3 hours, we talked more honestly than ever before. I asked about his past relationships, his doubts about his profession, even his attraction to me during our sessions. He answered without reservation, revealing the man behind. The therapist flawed, thoughtful, and far more conflicted than he'd ever let me see. Final question, I said as midnight approached. No pressure for a particular answer, just truth. Gabriel nodded, eyes never leaving mine. What do you want from me now? Not what's ethical or appropriate or safe. What do you want? His answer would determine everything that followed. Gabriel's expression shifted, professional control giving way to something raw and genuine. What I want, he said slowly, is to know you outside the context that brought us together. To discover who you are beyond the patient, beyond the trauma, beyond the carefully structured dynamic we created. He paused, choosing his words with characteristic precision. I want to experience you as an equal, not someone to guide or heal, but someone to walk alongside. And I pressed, sensing there was more. His eyes held mine. And yes, I want you physically. Have since long before it was appropriate to acknowledge. The admission hung between us, neither shocking nor surprising, but powerful in its simplicity. Your turn, he said quietly. What do you want, Eliza? I'd rehearsed this answer, determined to be as honest as I demanded he be. I want to know if what I feel for you is real, or if it's just an echo of our therapeutic relationship. If the attraction that developed under those artificial conditions can survive in the real world. I took a breath. And I want to reclaim the parts of myself I discovered through our work together, but on my terms. Not as therapy, but as choice. The submission, he clarified. Yes, my cheeks warmed, but I held his gaze. That surrender was liberating in ways I never expected. I don't want to lose that discovery just because our context has changed. Gabriel was quiet for a moment. That creates complications, I know. The power dynamic we established was therapeutic, not romantic. Transitioning between those contexts would require clear boundaries, I finished for him, new rules, explicit consent, complete agency for both of us. A hint of smile touched his lips. You've thought about this? Extensively. He leaned forward slightly. Eliza, if we pursue this, whatever this becomes, we need to be certain it's healthy. That we're not recreating a therapeutic relationship under a different name. How do we ensure that? Time, he said simply. Patience. Building something new rather than recycling what came before. I nodded, understanding his caution even as part of me chafed against it. And professional separation, he added. I can't be both your former therapist and your current partner. Those worlds need to remain distinct. What does that mean practically? It means we don't discuss your therapy in detail. We don't replicate our sessions. We create new patterns, new rituals, if that's what we both want. The clarity of his boundaries was simultaneously frustrating and reassuring, so quintessentially Gabriel that it made me smile. What? He asked, noticing my expression. Just appreciating your consistent commitment to ethical frameworks. Some habits are hard to break, he acknowledged with a self-deprecating smile. I don't want you to break them, I said honestly. Your integrity is part of who you are. Part of what I hesitated, then finished simply, value. Something softened in his expression. Thank you for that. We sat in comfortable silence, the tension between us neither resolved nor dissipated, but somehow transformed, no longer an obstacle, but a pathway to be navigated together. So where do we go from here? I finally asked. Gabriel considered this. Forward, I think, slowly, learning each other as we are now, not as we were, and the physical aspect. We'll evolve naturally, he said, without rush or pressure. I raised an eyebrow. More boundaries, necessary ones, he countered gently. For both our sakes. As he prepared to leave, Gabriel paused at my door. There's something I want you to know, Eliza. What's that? Whatever happens between us, whether this becomes something lasting or simply a transition to a different kind of closure, what you accomplished in therapy was yours. Your courage, your growth, your healing. His eyes held mine intently. No future development changes that achievement. The words settled something inside me I hadn't realized was still unsettled. Thank you for that. May I? He asked, gesturing tentatively. I nodded, and he stepped forward, enfolding me in a careful embrace, our first physical contact outside the structured confines of therapy. His arms were strong, his heartbeat steady against mine. When we separated, something had shifted subtly between us. Not a dramatic transformation, but a gentle recalibration, the first step toward whatever we might become. Good night, Eliza, he said softly. Good night, Gabriel. As I closed the door behind him, I thought about the journey that had brought us. Here, from his clinical assessment of my potential to this moment of mutual recognition. From him asking me to crawl to us standing as equals, the path ahead remained uncertain, the balance between our past and future delicate. But for the first time, I felt truly capable of navigating that complexity, strong enough to surrender when I chose, and strong enough to stand firm when needed. I still had potential, but now I was the one who decided how to fulfill it.